Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you all to this webinar session. And I will begin by acknowledging that today's session is attended by national government representatives, ministers from the county government, senior officials from the Council of Governors, USAID Kenya and East Africa representatives, members of the private sector, all protocols observed. So the aim of our webinar today is to build the capacity of county government officials responsible for trade on how we can develop an export-oriented textile and apparel value chain right from the counties. So this session will be an opportunity for Kenyan counties to really get to explore how they can support the private enterprises in the county level to meet the high demand for apparel in the US. So I am Nelly Ngongoro, and I work as a trade and investment specialist at USAID TradeHub, and it is an honor for me to be guiding today's session. So before we kick off our webinar, I'll make just a few housekeeping announcements just to ensure that our webinar flows smoothly. So the first one is that the session today will be recorded, and this is purely for purposes of future capacity building initiatives. Secondly, I'd like to kindly request that you check to ensure that your microphone is on mute. Kindly check that your microphone is on mute and that your video is off during the session. And we request that only our speakers have their video and microphone on when making their remarks, or for the participants when we call on you or when we give you an opportunity to ask your question. So we really hope today's session will be as interactive as possible. So you are free to make your comments or ask your questions. So please feel free to type it on the chat box. The chat box is at the top right. You will see a chat icon, and we shall have a question and answer session where participants will have the opportunity to ask their questions or make their comments. So I think without further ado, we shall move straight into the program of the day. And this, we shall kick it off with a presentation from Margaret Waithaka. Margaret is the program director at USAID TradeHub, and she will take us through a presentation on an introduction to AGOA, and she shall also present on the AGOA apparel trade provision. So welcome, Margaret. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Nelly, and good afternoon, everyone. Good morning to Andres, who has just woken up in the US, and we're very happy to have all of you on this webinar. As Nelly has mentioned, we both work for a USAID trade project called the USAID TradeHub. We're based here in Nairobi, and we work in 5 Eastern African countries, including Kenya, and in 5 sectors. So we're very pleased to be able to have this interaction with the county governments. And as we all know, under the Constitution of 2010, there are key roles to be played by the county governments, default functions, and roles for the national government. So I think in today's webinar, we are going to have both the national government and also the county governments present. And in fact, we have a presentation from one of the national government institutions. And we'll also hear from the private sector. So just to give you a quick overview of the program, I will do a presentation on AGOA, apparel and trade provisions, so that we put it in context of the US market. Then we'll have a presentation from Mr. Hezekiah Okeo, who is the Industrialization Secretary, National Government under the State Department for Industrialization in the Ministry for Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development. He will talk about what Kenya can do, or what is Kenya planning to do to improve apparel trade performance from an industrial point of view. Then we'll have a presentation by Andres Saldias. He is a market linkage consultant based in the US, and he'll look at the requirements for developing a regional, vertically integrated textile and apparel value chain in East Africa. The value proposition being that we're providing resources for East Africa, not just for Kenya. And then we'll go to the private sector, After the Q&A, we'll have a small Q&A break. Then we'll go to the private sector, and where we'll have 2 speakers from the local apparel industry who are already themselves exporting to the US under AGOA. So we have quite a few speakers, and I'm really, really privileged to be part of such a wonderful panel. So I'll go into my presentation. And like Nelly said, I work for the USAID TradeHub here in Nairobi. The theme of my presentation is essentially about AGOA. So we're talking about what does AGOA provide in terms of textile and apparel provisions for the US market. So first of all, just to summarize, AGOA is a US law. It was contained in the Trade Act of year 2000, and it provided for duty-free, quota-free access to the US market for enterprises or goods, rather the goods coming from enterprises located within sub-Saharan Africa. And the proposed benefits of this program were to increase trade and investment, and also to lead to economic development in the sub-Saharan African countries. And this is almost 21 years ago, actually. And it has provided quite a wide range of market opportunities to the exporters from the region. The eligible products are about 6,500, with additional number of products from the apparel sector. And these are duty-free tariff lines. And if you look at the percentage of, for instance, the available tariff lines, many of the products which Kenya can export and has capacity to export, almost all of them are duty-free into the US market. So it provides a wonderful opportunity for Kenyan enterprises and the Kenyan public sector to see how they can actually get into this very profitable, very large and highly sophisticated market, but where there's a niche, I think, for almost all our producers. AGOA, as that market preference program, which was passed by the US government, US Congress, has been renewed several times. And most recently in 2015, AGOA was renewed for a further 10 years, so that it will expire in September 2025. So for us here in Kenya, we actually have another, I would say another 4 years in which to make use of this very attractive market preference. In terms of what AGOA provides in terms of country eligibility, I went through this the other day, but I'll just mention it again. Not every single sub-Saharan African country is eligible. There's a process whereby countries seek to be classified as eligible, and they are assessed by the respective US government agencies, including the US President's Office, and then, of course, even the USTR. And recommendations are made as to the eligibility of a country. These countries have various criteria that they must adhere to be made AGOA eligible. So first of all, there's the aspect of having a market-based economy, which protects private property rights. There must be an elimination of barriers to US trade and investment. And there should also be a rule of law, political pluralism, and also the right to due process and a fair trial. So various issues with respect to both the political environment, democracy, and also the legal system. In addition, there's a requirement that countries should not have child labor or forced labor, so there should be protection against those. And then also a system to combat corruption and bribery. And then also economic policies, which will be able to reduce poverty, increase availability of healthcare, and educational opportunities. So these are some of the criteria which are used by the US government and the other stakeholders to determine whether a country should be given AGOA access or be deemed to be AGOA eligible. And thereafter, the enterprises in that country are able to sell to the US under this duty-free, quota-free arrangement that AGOA consists of. Now, so that's talking about the countries themselves. What about the individual? Products? So we have amongst the 39 countries that are currently eligible, we have a number of products that those countries are selling. So currently there are at least 6,500 eligible tariff lines that are AGOA eligible, and they include a whole range of things. So AGOA was basically an extension of the old GSP. GSP stands for Generalized Systems of Preference, and that is a scheme that had been operating to allow developing countries to sell products to the US for at least 6 decades, just before AGOA came in, about 5 to 6 decades before AGOA came in. So GSP was then enhanced with a further almost 1,800 additional products way back in year 2000. And some of these products that were added were products which traditionally would have been deemed to be sensitive, like apparel and other products like those. But the US opened up its market and said that as long as you meet the requirements, then you should have access to the US market on a duty-free basis. Now, if you want to know which products are eligible, you can look at that website. I wouldn't go into details. You get copies of this presentation, but there is a site on the agoa.info pages, and you'll be able to actually look for a particular product. They're listed in the sequence of the HTSUS. HTS is the short name for Harmonized Tariff Schedule of the United States. It's like what we use here in East Africa, which is the HS code. Now, they're listed in sequence from the lowest tariff code to the highest HS number. And you're able also to search by the name of the product. So you can go to that site and see which particular product, if you want to export it, whether it is eligible for AGOA. Secondly, there are other locations or other sites where you can find out more about product eligibility. You can go to a site called USITC. USITC stands for the United States International Trade Commission. And this is an organ of the US government that looks after statistics and performance of the various trade arrangements the US government has entered into. So there you'll be able to see what a particular product has as its tariff. So there are three major types of tariff. You have the normal tariff, which is called your MFN tariff. You have tariffs where the product itself is duty-free completely. And then you have tariffs where there are market preference programs. So under this particular scenario, we have something called a special tariff indicator, STI. That STI provides the code for a particular scheme. So if you look, I think you can see in that table on the right-hand side, this was a search we did for footwear. And where it's highlighted in green, that's all the places where footwear appeared. On the far right, you see a column. On the far right, you see a column which indicates the STI code for that particular product. And you will see that footwear, for instance, has the letter D next to it, which means it's AGOA eligible. It's duty-free under AGOA. So various footwear products are duty-free under AGOA, and you will not find it with a code of A, because A stands for GSP. Okay, so you can go into that later. You can explore different products. From that, you can see the difference between the MFN tariff and the actual AGOA tariff, which is 0. So you can see the duty differential for a particular product. And that's quite interesting. For those of you in the apparel sector, you'll be able to check and see which particular product or product group you want to export under AGOA and see the tariff differential between an East African or Kenyan producer who is duty-free and a producer from another part of the world where they still have tariffs. Okay, so next we look at the various types of products under AGOA, and I'm coming to the subject of textiles and apparel. We have two major types of products which are exported under AGOA. We have the non-textiles and we have the textiles, or the textiles and apparel. So these two product types have different requirements and different procedures or documentation. So I'll not focus on the non-apparel because that's not the subject of today's presentation. I'll go straight away and look at the general criteria and then the specific requirements for the apparel. So if we look at the general criteria for duty-free access to the US, there are several criteria. One, that product must be listed in the GSP or AGOA eligible products, the 6,500 or so that we talked about earlier. and the schedule is given as per my earlier slide. Secondly, the product must be sent or imported directly into the US from an AGOA beneficiary country. So once the product is manufactured, it's inspected by the customs authority, the documentation is done, the container is sealed, or it is put in the respective vehicle or receptacle for conveyance to the US market, it should go directly to the US. So it should not go somewhere, be opened, somebody adds something, somebody adds, subtract something or changes the goods. The goods should remain intact, going directly to the US from the AGOA beneficiary country. The third criteria, it should be the growth product or manufacture of the AGOA beneficiary country based on the rules of origin. For apparel, the rules of origin, we'll look at them shortly. For the other products, it's mostly a local value added requirement or component of the finished value, minimum value actually sourced from the local producers, or accumulation of value from the other AGOA beneficiary countries. And lastly, with more specific reference to what we're discussing today, they should be compliant with the special rule for textiles and apparel. So let's go to the next slide, which really talks about the visa requirements and the provisions under the textile components. So under AGOA, we have very special provisions or requirements for textile and apparel. As I mentioned to you, textiles and apparel were traditionally seen as sensitive products, products where almost every industrial nation has invested in or has developed over the years and has been the source of significant economic growth. So if you look at almost every country you can mention that's currently highly industrialized, that is one of the sectors that has been developed in that country over time. So this was traditionally seen as being quite sensitive, but AGOA actually provided, along with other schemes, of course, like Caribbean Basin Initiative and so on, also now provided duty-free access to the US market. So what sort of access is this? This is duty-free and quota-free treatment for eligible apparel articles exported to the US up to the year 2025. That's September, in 4 years' time. Now, for the goods which are appearing or arriving in the US, they must be eligible under the current textile visa system. So one of the first criteria is that once a country has been defined to be eligible, then they will initiate measures to implement a textile visa system. The textile visa system is to counteract what you could call transshipment or diversion of goods which are not manufactured in the country which is supposed to be the beneficiary. And those goods must actually, the goods that arrive in the US should be the ones which actually are manufactured in the country according to the rules that pertain for textiles and apparel. So one thing that is very important is that the Kenya Revenue Authority and Kenya Association of Manufacturers, they have put in place a system whereby new factories are inspected, and then the factory is reviewed, and KM will certify that that factory actually has the capacity to produce. And then for every shipment, there is certification by the Revenue Authority, and a visa is stamped on the entry or the documentation which accompanies the goods to the US. So that is the measures which have been put in place to avoid circumvention of the rules of origin. We talked about duty-free, quota-free. Quota-free means there's no specific limit for an individual country. However, collectively, amongst the countries which are AGOA eligible and have the textile visa provision in place, there is a cap. That cap consists of two parts. One is for all apparel sold under AGOA. There's a limit of 7% of the total apparel imported into the US in the previous year. So if you were to convert a garment into, say, square meter equivalents, let's say a shirt takes 1 meter, if you add all the shirts that were taken to the US plus all the trousers plus everything, there's a quantity of fabric that you can say has been used, and 7% of that of the previous year's fabric is what is available to all the AGOA countries together. And just to say that that limit has never been reached, that quota has never been fulfilled. Secondly, if they're using the special provision, which is the third country provision, which is applicable to least developed countries in sub-Saharan Africa, the limit is 3.5% of the previous year's apparel imports. So what is an LDC? An LDC is a country which by 1998 had a GNP, gross national product, of less than 1,500 US dollars. So that is the criteria that I use, and Kenya fits, in this particular case, Kenya fits in that criteria. Now, there are other items that are put in clothing. There's something called findings and trimmings. Findings and trimmings consist of things like hooks and eye snaps, sewing thread, elastics, strips, decorative lace trims, and zippers. And these can be foreign owned, or foreign origin, for up to 25% of the value of the assembled components. There are also other components which comprise of things like collars, cuffs, drawstrings, paddings, and so on, which are also allowed. Now, let's look at the different types of composition, or how a product is defined in terms of qualifying for manufacture and being sold duty-free to the US. We basically have 10 textile categories, which includes apparel, and then 2 categories which are not so much of apparel, they're more of textile products. So first of all, on the apparel side, we have a continuum of 8 different apparel types, where the fabric source, the yarn source, where the products are cut, the fabrics are cut into the products, take place. So you have from, for instance, what you call category 1A. This is apparel made of US yarns. So the yarn comes from the US and US fabric. It is knit to shape, and with the fabric being cut in the US. So in this case, the fabric would be cut in the US, of US fabric. It is sent to an AGOA eligible country. It is stitched up, and then it is sent back to the US. This is what category 1A comprises. So it goes on to a full continuum to where you have much more of the local value addition. So the one I want to point us out to is category 5. Category 5 or 5E. Yes, this is what we often refer to as third country fabric. Third country fabric means fabric which originates not from the US, neither from an AGOA eligible country. So this is fabric where you can import from a third country like China, for instance, or India, or I don't know, any other non-AGOA eligible country, and not from the US, and cut it, you stitch it, you finish it, you pack it, and then you export with the necessary documentation to the US. So that is what we call third country fabric. And this is the most common fabric category. Later in the discussion today, you'll hear why we need, as a region, East Africa, I think, to move progressively to having more of the fabric manufactured in the region, particularly from the AGOA eligible countries. So we'll discuss that later. Let me refer to the last 2 categories, category 9, next slide, and category note. Category 9 is for eligible hand-loomed, handmade folkloric products and ethnic printed fabrics. So these are items which have traditionally been made in various communities and various societies in sub-Saharan Africa, and they are recognized as being handmade and hand-loomed. So their particular construction is defined. You're not allowed to use a sewing machine, for instance, or very modern things like zips for securing the product. There's a list which has been agreed between the respective governments, in the Kenya government and the US government, of what these consist of. And for instance, things like certain kikois, their bags, and then even kofias, those are defined as being eligible, and they go duty-free as long as they're handmade, hand-loom products of folkloric value. Then we have something called category note. Category note is basically textile and textile articles originating entirely That is, there's no import content within one or more LDC beneficiary country. Remember, LDC means less than 1,500 US dollars GNP in 1998. So this covers a whole range of products, towels, blankets, sheets, and all those. So that's important for us to refer to, so that you as an exporter or you as a county government official can identify which particular product you can slot yourself in, and you can promote for development of your sector in your county. So let me just say that we have a number of resources. We have a number of resources which are available to you. First of all, I'd like you to refer to the AGOA 101. AGOA 101 is a how-to guide produced with the support of the USAID, and it describes exactly how you're supposed to go about exporting. Now, for you as the county government, it's of relevance, but it's even more important for your exporters or the people who are located in your county area. So you can refer to that. You can go to that website, www.agoa.info, and you can download it, and you'll be able to see exactly what it provides. In terms of forms, you can see the forms, you can see the requirements, you can see where also you're supposed to go for certain approvals and how long they take. So it's a guide for entrepreneurs to get into exporting. We've also prepared under the current USAID TradeHub and also under the previous USAID Trade and Investment Hub for East Africa, a number of end market reports. They are given there, and one which is particularly relevant is the one for apparel. You can go to that website and download. And then we also have a couple of resources which may be of interest to you. Those who are interested in trade statistics and you want to see for textiles and apparel in the US, how much was sold, say from your major competitors. I won't say who those are, but you're able to go in and see what are the trends globally in terms of exports to the US. So it will give you statistics under something called the Major Shippers Report on that website, www.otexa.trade.gov. OTEXA stands for Office of Textiles and Apparel. And this is the team within the US administration that looks at the statistics for both imports and exports of apparel from the US. So you find detailed statistics expressed in both US dollars value for different years and different periods, and also expressed in square meter equivalents. As I described earlier, you convert a particular garment into the equivalent square meters of fabric. So it's a very useful site if you want to see how the trends are going, and they have monthly statistics you can see from your country or from the whole of AGOA together, or from, say, Brazil or Peru or Italy or wherever, whoever else is exporting to the US. The last source is very interesting. It's a private magazine, but very, very useful. It's called Sourcing Journal. You can subscribe as an entrepreneur or even as a government official free of charge. You can get a weekly newsletter which will help you to understand what are the market trends in the US for apparel, what's happening. But in addition, if you want the detailed reports, you must pay a subscription of about, I think it's about $250 a year, which will give you access to very valuable reports. So these are just some of the resources you can refer to. And I've given you the website for Sourcing Journal. You can also Google it. It's www.sourcingjournal.com. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That's the introduction and overview of the US market or the US market opportunity under AGOA for producing apparel and textiles, duty-free, quota-free to the US. And I hope you'll be able to take advantage. Thank you very much. I'll hand you over back to Nelly.
All right, thank you so much, Margaret, for that presentation, and also presenting on an introduction to AGOA and also sharing on the specific provisions that go into textile and apparel. So we'll move next to our agenda, and we'll skip the next speaker who will join after Andres. So we shall now invite Mr. Andres Saldias, who is an apparel and market linkage consultant for the US market. Andres has vast experience in end markets such as the US, and he will take us through a presentation on how the East African region can develop a vertically integrated textile and apparel value chain. So over to you, Andres.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. It's very nice to be part of this webinar. As Margaret said, I am based in the US. I've been working with the region for the last 4 years in order to understand the competitive advantages of the region in the textile and apparel, but also more importantly, to find and understand what the market requires to be competitive. And after all these market disruptions, I'd like to share with you where we stand right now. But I want to give you a perspective from the market and actual buyers, which are the importers of textiles and apparel from East Africa. That presentation is called Speed to Market, developing a regional vertically integrated textile apparel value chain in East Africa. So the objectives are on my presentation is understand market disruptions at the global sourcing apparel value chain during and after COVID-19. The pandemic has placed a hard reset in all economies, and the apparel value chain has been impacted as well. I will share with you where do we stand and how the future looks like. And the second objective is understand the need to incorporate value to apparel, which means fabric plus labor through a regional value chain within Kenya and Africa and provide speed to market. Most factories in East Africa are providing mainly what's called CMT, cut, make, and trim, which is the labor portion. That means, like Margaret explained in the AGOA eligibility, that fabric is mainly coming from the Far East and it's imported into East Africa, and then it's cut and it's made as an apparel, and then it's finished with the local labor. It is assembled by Kenyan workers, and the finished garment is exported to the US under the AGOA provision. But please note here, the majority of the fabric is coming from other countries, mainly from the Far East. So I like to share with you and understand what the market needs specifically in this portion of the business. The US market is the largest importer, followed by Europe with 27 countries. The second largest importer is Germany, but the US is 4 times larger than Germany. It represents about $80 billion on yearly imports. And as you can see, many countries are trying to get a market share. China, Bangladesh, in Central America, what's called the Caribbean Basin Trade and Partnership Agreement, which is the same provisions than AGOA. In South America, you have the Andean Trade Preference and Drug Eradication Act, which is the same provisions than AGOA. Then you have the AGOA countries. Everybody trying to get a piece of that market. Let's understand where we stand in the last 5 years. As you can see in the first line, the US represented $83.9 billion of imports in 2016. It went to 87.5 million in 2019. But you can see in 2020, has been a 19% decrease of the market to 71 billion. And that explanation is due to COVID-19 market disruptions. And as you can see, the major suppliers being China, the #1 supplier, right? China is about 33% of the market share, largest exporter in the US, followed by new countries like Vietnam, Bangladesh, Indonesia, and India, Cambodia, Mexico, Honduras, Sri Lanka, and so on. But you can see in the last right portion of that chart, all of those countries have decreased their exports in 2020, which an overall decrease of 19%. That's the market disruption. That's the immediate effect of COVID in the US market import industry. That also is shown in East Africa. As you can see, Ethiopia has been making a huge increase in the last 5 years from 28 million to 223 million. That's a growth of 10 times in only 4 years. How did they make that? Mainly because they had implemented intervention policies to promote and prioritize the textile and apparel business through industrial parks. They have 5 industrial parks and are welcoming investors. This is extremely important for you to understand, and the reason why we need to promote a different approach than the one that the company has been doing in the last 5 years. Conditions have changed dramatically. Let me show you, if you see the blue line, it's China exports to the US market. Starting 2018, those exports were dropping down, they were being reduced. 2019 more aggressively, and 2020, of course, due to the COVID-19, was reducing as well. But it's not only the only reason. Only 2020 was the reduction due to COVID, but already from 2018 was reducing. But the interesting is, at the same token, from 2018, countries like Indonesia, Vietnam, Bangladesh, and the rest of the world were increasing. That means that reduction of market share that China was allowing became the fundamentals for other countries to take that portion of the business, to supplement Chinese reduction. And I want to explain why that happened. Why is this happening? Mainly China has something that the rest of the world doesn't have, which is control of fabric. China is the country that really has the largest factories and fabric development capability. So it will be very difficult to fully replace China unless countries understand the new trend after COVID. And what is in the buyers? What the buyers want at this point? How can we keep replacing China and gain more market share from East Africa against Vietnam, Indonesia, Bangladesh? And the answer is speed to market as an integral part of the new way of working. What is the speed to market? Buyers are really pursuing to get in touch and do business with vertical local sourcing partners. That means the labor supply, which is the cut, make, and trim, is not longer enough. They want suppliers that they can provide the fabric as well. Please note, from the business perspective and from the buyer's mind, from the 100% of the garment price, 50 to 60% of that cost is the fabric, is the largest portion. 20% is only 20%. So Kenya is right now offering only 20% of the business by providing labor. The trend is moving away from dependence on China material supply and indeed apparel. That's what the buyers want. They want to replace China as long as they can find fabric suppliers. Labor cost is not the main factor. Very important for county officials towards the future. Not only the main factor. Quality, of course, is important, but it's no longer discussed. It is assumed if you're going to be in the exporting market, quality is already there. And now another huge trend is the minimum orders quantity. That means that per style, the market is demanding lower quantities. In the past, they will order 5,000 units per style, but now they're saying, no, I just need 800 units. Why is that? After the market disruption, all the retail stores have been shut down for a few months, almost a year, and the new trend came into place, which is the online sales. That has become the major trend. And to do online, you need to receive the goods quickly. You need to lower the inventory because it's expensive to have an inventory. That's why you need lower minimum order quantities. You cannot hold a 5,000 units inventory online, and buyers are really looking forward to get 800 units because they need to ensure that the cash flow is not erratic due to the pandemic effect in the market. That requires shorter lead times. That definitely requires, because they want to go from the factory to the door of the consumer through online sales in a quicker manner. That's why they need shorter lead times. That's why speed to market is become and then way of working. And then transparency. Transparency is another trend, which means that the factories, to accommodate to this new trend, they need to be automatized. They have to be implementing digitalization information systems. So the buyers, due to the lack of traveling, due to the pandemic, they need to see the factories virtually. That's called virtual production management. So in the US, they want to see what's going on in the production floor, when it's going to be shipped, what is the rejections on qualities, and etc. And that happens only with technology, and that's the new trend after COVID. So if we see what happened in the last 30 years, from 1970, basically companies were providing labor, CMT, right? all the way to 2021, what the buyers are looking is called full package, which means that not only labor, but also fabric, product development, and speed to market. What does that require? It requires an integration of cotton, in the case of East Africa, very large cotton countries like Uganda, Tanzania, textile, which means a huge investment in technology, in know-how, and produce cotton seeds from spinning, ginning, spinning, knitting, woven until fabric, and then finally apparel. Now, let me share this very quickly. To implement an apparel firm for about 2,000 workers, the investment is about $350,000. That's a brand new state-of-the-art machinery, creating 2,000 labor positions. To invest in a textile mill, it requires $32 million to put the proper equipment in ginneries, in knitting, weaving, dyeing, in order to comply with the qualities required by the market. So the textile portion requires heavy investments and know-how. The apparel industry, it requires lower investment amounts, but the market is moving towards the integration. So the challenge here is, how do we promote more textile companies in Kenya, as fabric supply becomes the most critical factor to ensure speed to market. If we see other neighbor countries in the region, throughout these years, I was able to find multiple fabric suppliers, like in Tanzania, Uganda, Ethiopia, Madagascar, Mauritius, but just a few in Kenya. This is very important. All the buyers that are looking at East Africa, and remember, I communicate with the buyers on a daily basis, okay? And all the buyers are saying, look for vertical solutions to my business. Look for fabric suppliers. Can you promote, can the TradeHub, can the counties, can the governments provide more investment in the region? Because we will secure orders as long as you have fabric supply. And all these countries, especially A to Z in Tanzania, is already full. It's looking to expand. They cannot supply anything anymore because the demand is so huge. And all these fabric suppliers, which are investments, like I told you, in technology and know-how, are supplying already apparel factories in Kenya. Many manufacturing factories in Kenya are already receiving, instead of receiving fabric from China, receiving from the region. That is the business model that the buyers are pursuing very heavily. We need to ensure that Kenya, as the number one exporter in Africa to the US, can really understand the importance not only on integrating with other countries that have already textile mills, but more importantly, to promote investments in textiles in the country. How do you promote textile investments? That my answer is very simple. You provide red carpet to investors. What is red carpet? Is the full commitment of the government through direct incentives, direct legislation, through industrial parks and incentives to bring technologies. And Kenya has most of that legislation already in place. So why there is no more textiles in Kenya? And that's called exposure. And that's what Ethiopia is doing great. The investment promotion is being led by the minister himself. He's the champion. He is the one who received the investors, puts red carpet, and invites every investor to be in Ethiopia. That's why they grow 10 times in the last 4 years. And believe me, they will gonna keep growing with that approach. So these are very important benchmarking lessons learned from other countries. But Kenya has every single, in my opinion, every single competitive advantage to interact and implement a very aggressive investment policy to bring the textile portion of the business into the country. So in the center is the buyers, right? Just imagine that I am the buyer, because I am talking to the buyers every day. The buyers, what they want? They want to increase sales, they want to increase profits, right? This is a business. So the buyers, when they explore East Africa, of course, the first thing I pitch and I show is AGOA, because that definitely is a saving in the import duty. Like when Margaret was making the presentation, the end result of AGOA is when these goods go into the US made in Africa, they will not pay import duties. And that import duty is between 17 and 32%. While China, while Bangladesh, while Vietnam, while Indonesia, when they get into the US, they will pay up to 32%. So Africa is already 17 to 32% more competitive in the final price. That's the beauty of AGOA. That's the end result from a business perspective of AGOA. So it is definitely a great advantage for the region. Therefore, Africa becomes a real alternative to Asia and other competitors. Digital sourcing and service, another trend from the buyers. Can you communicate digitally? Can you show me your production digitally because I cannot travel to see you? Can you provide speed to market because I need to secure my online sales? Can you incorporate fabric supply? Because if I'm going to send you fabric from China, it's going to take 31 days to get into Kenya. Another 30 days in production. Another 30 days to go back to the US. That's 90 days. But that's not speed to market. Speed to market is if I get the fabric supply from Tanzania or from Kenya, I'll get your fabric in 10 days, plus 30 days on production and shipping. Instead of being in 3 months, I'm going to be in your market, in your store, in the US store in 30 to 45 days by having the fabric supply control. That is speed to market. And the pricing is competitive not only because of labor. That's something that you need to understand. Labor, it's important, but it's not the only factor anymore. And if you guys want to continue to be competitive in the market, labor is not the only factor because there are so many countries like Bangladesh, like Central America, like East Asia, like East Europe, that are all very, very, very competitive in labor. Productivity, efficiency, and digitalization, that's very important. Efficiencies are related how fast can you manufacture a t-shirt, a garment, and that comes with training as well. So the future sourcing, it's important. I'm sure you have heard about another factor in addition to COVID. The US administration has been struggling with China imports and increasing import duties to China. There is a lot of human rights issues in China that are proclaiming and not allowing the firms to continue doing business with Asia and China mainly. And that's why the opportunity comes for countries like Kenya. The market is trying to move away from China. So how do we build that trust factor? And I think Kenya already has a long-term relationship with the US. And in the buyer's mind, let's think about a regional value chain proposition. Either you produce fabric in Kenya or you buy it from Africa. And that's what's going to be really triggering the interest from more buyers to come into Kenya. So what would success look like? How do we do things? Enhance textile industry, adding value to cotton lint, yarn mills, including polyester, and promoting new investment in fabric production, knitting and woven for export and also local industry. So that's the #1 target that the county should have. How do we enhance the textile industry, which is different than the apparel industry? The textile, once again, is the fabric production. That's what's needed in Kenya. Large-scale export-oriented textiles and garment factories potentially employing tens of thousands of skilled workers. I can assure you, if you would have fabric supply, you will quadruple your exports. All this, the labor is going to be created in tens of thousands of workers because all the buyers are going to look into Kenya to place more and more orders and production into the country. Many countries kickstarted the cotton, textile, and apparel value chain through the garment export industry. Once the scale is achieved, backward linkage occurs naturally. You guys are there already. You already have a large industry of CMT companies. I have interacted, visited, evaluated, discussed with the business owners of about 30 amazing CMT factories. You already have an industry, an apparel industry. Then once this scale is achieved, the backward linkage, which is the fabric supply, should occur naturally. As the industry matures and it moves from CMT to full service package fabric plus labor, resulting in additional value add and increased market share. The US market is huge, $80 billion. You guys are selling less than 400 million, right? So, and the opportunities, the market trends and the opportunities are wide open to explore new suppliers in the African continent. Market access condition beyond AGOA, and this is the main concern, I'm sure, from the government of Kenya, you guys, what happens after AGOA? What if they don't extend AGOA? What if we lose that 17 to 32% benefit in the final price? The benefit only will remain competitive with a vertically integrated value chain to neutralize the import duty cost impact. Question to the audience. All these huge countries, China, Bangladesh, Indonesia, they don't have AGOA benefit. How can they be more competitive if they're spending 32% more than AGOA? Because they are integrated, they have value chain, they have the fabric supply. So if you ever lose your AGOA, knock on wood, I hope never happens, the only way you're going to remain competitive is through having your textile portion in the country. Manage that portion of the cost, which is 50 to 60%, and you will be still competitive regardless of AGOA or not. That's a very, very important message that I want to put across. You know, and new buyers that are coming to Africa is the result of changes in their current supplies. Why we brought so many buyers from the US to Africa, to Kenya through the project, and Ethiopia and Madagascar and Tanzania, because they are replacing current suppliers. And who are they replacing? China, mainly, because of the advantages that the continent has to offer at current conditions. But again, without the textile apparel incorporation, I think there's a big threat on continue growing like you guys been in the last 4 or 5 years. So I just want to point out how huge is the market. That's New York. That's called the Fashion District. There are 80 buildings. Each building has 40 to 60 floors, and in each floor, you will find 10 to 5 importing firms. It is huge. They are looking to get new partners. But it's very difficult for me if I cannot offer a value chain integrated. CMT, when I offer, they say, yeah, but I get CMT in Honduras, and they ship in 2 days to my store. Well, you spend 30 days from Africa. Why would I buy CMT from Africa? Well, I can buy nearshoring from Guatemala or Honduras or Salvador. But if I go, no, because you have textile integrated, that changes completely the situation. That clearly moves forward on enhancing what the continent has to offer. I hope the message is clear. I'm giving you first-hand information from large U.S. major importers, and I'm so honored that you can listen to me and get the message across and start moving towards an implementation process of this strategy. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you so much, Andres, for that very interesting presentation. And for one, highlighting that the US market is very huge, stands at $80 billion. I think we all agree that's a very huge market. But also I like that you've shared useful tips on what Kenya can do to compete with the likes of Vietnam and Bangladesh to take up this huge market share. So thank you so much for that. Just a reminder, if you have questions, kindly post them on the chat box. We shall have a Q&A session, so please feel free to type your question or comment. So for our next agenda item, I'd like to call on Mr. Hezekiah Okeo. Mr. Okeo is the Industrialization Secretary, State Department for Industrialization in the Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development. So Mr. Okeo will make a presentation on the key approaches towards improving Kenya and US apparel trade performance. So welcome, Mr. Okeo.
Thank you, Nelly. Thank you, the team. I just joined in when Andreas was in the middle, and having listened to the segment is presented, I'll jump straight to the third page. So, Andreas, thank you for those probing questions and a very exciting presentation on Kenya's potential that we are seeing, even where I sit at the ministry responsible for industrialization. We are looking at this sector not as truncated as has been before. That CMT, therefore, government has been the focus, and it has really been that way almost for the 20 years of AGOA. Those opportunities across the value chains are present and are viable, right from fiber production to textile. And as we have said, we totally agree, over 90% of what we use in our government making enterprises for export to the US, dependence on China and India. We are getting accessories again from the same areas, and very, very little integration we are seeing. So that is true, and I want to confirm that in my slide. We did not talk before, but this slide confirms what you have said, and we have identified these opportunities. And we are putting a target which we had put in the year 2018 when the government, which is already leading, had set targets to enhance the levels of investment. And as you have said, we are racing towards those targets at the bottom of 2022. We look for new jobs across the value chain. We look for new jobs also in the garments. In the next slide are the strategies now. We have come a long way, and we have agreed that we need an integrated and value chain approach led by the market. And therefore, we start from market and we come up to the raw material. We are in stage 3 and 4 at the moment, and stage 2 and 1 is what we have done almost over the last 20 years. One, that the export markets in AGOA was very critical, that's the US, but looking beyond one single market and checking that we can get also other products into the export market. Therefore, we have the US, we have the EU, and the rest. We are alive that AGOA was extended in 2015 for 10 years and is supposed to end in 2025. And that's why Kenya is negotiating a free trade area with the US. We had advanced up to last year before the elections in the US. We had gone around 2 of our negotiations of the 6-step rounds. We are ready as Kenya. We are waiting for the US side to reorganize themselves, and we come back to the table for round 3. Textile is one of the critical chapters out of the general chapter on market access. I'm leading the textile chapter under the Kenya-US FTA. So therefore, any question around that, I'll welcome, and therefore I'll give more details. We signed last year the Kenya-UK Apparel, which is a regional Apparel, and we have the EU and still standing and other markets. So we started from the market and we know what the market requires. We are looking at the domestic market as well to also stimulate other investments, including even fashion and design. So our initiative of Buy Kenya, Build Kenya is leading into the fashion and design industry, and we are seeing a lot of vibrancy on Fridays. So we started from the market. Andreas mentioned putting the incentives and the infrastructure in place to attract investment. We have the incentives under the 2 laws, the Export Processing Zones Act and the Special Economic Zones Act. And we are seeing investments coming, both in private sector driven special economic zones and also the public ones. We have 2 which are moving very fast in Mombasa and also in Naivasha. The Naivasha one is very interesting because we call it the Textile Industrial Park because of the green energy potential that is there in Naivasha. Therefore, steam will be able to run the steel mills because it's adequate. So the infrastructure development is going on. The horizontals are going on in Naivasha Industrial Park. And once this is done by the end of this year, the developers are already lined up and they will do the horizontal development like effluent treatment plants. And then the investors who are already knocking doors have been shown the potential, and we are waiting for that infrastructural conclusion, because this is next to the internal container depot at Naivasha, just 20 meters apart along the SGR. So the potential of Naivasha is huge in terms of infrastructure and in terms of the green energy that will be there. We are looking at modernizing the existing textile industries. We have 4, but we are not limited to that are already providing opportunities for even negotiations are going on within the existing garment factories and suppliers. The buyers like PVH are already engaged with 2 of our modernized factories for specialized fabrics that they'll need. The issues of environmental factors are being addressed so that the zero discharge principle of the market is also being incorporated in the designs of the 2 factories that are ready for supplying their fabrics for US market. In 2019, the government of Kenya approved commercialization of BT cotton, that is number 4, because one of the weakest link is the raw material, that we don't have either the synthetic and we don't have adequate fibers, be it cotton, silk, or wool. We started with cotton because over 80% of Kenya land can supply cotton. Therefore, with the commercialization of cotton going on in the country, we believe that it will also pull the modernization of ginneries. And with the 4 existing ginneries, Kenya had over 40 some time back. There will be opportunity, and this will be a good integrated approach. And this is the approach we have adopted. So the next slides are now just giving details, which I've already explained. So we can just go onto them and see. So at the EPZ, what we did is to provide a plug and play infrastructure, expanding the facilities, and those which we did between 2015 and 2019 are now taken up. We are also providing serviced land within the sheds, and the opportunity for other counties that are also looking at opening up more to continue benefiting from the AGOA window that is still there. So the facilities are plug and play for investors for rent, and they come, and those who have already taken space are already expanding their production. There are those which are new, and there are those who have been there before and needed more space. So this work is going on of construction of more sheds and go downs and expanding the internal roads and water reticulation so that those who need bigger facilities can rent the land and go on, and there are those who are constructing their own sheds. So this is the direction of the export processing zones, and we are looking further into attracting more. Through PVH, new investors have come, AMS, we have JF&I, and we are looking forward to PVH coming back this month of September. They were here, the president of PVH was here. The Kenyan president promised them that by the time they're coming back, they'll see a change in the Naivasha horizontal development. Therefore, they want to put an investment towards integrating the textile mills with the garment making that they're already investing at the EBZ. So that integration is already done, and we are looking at the PVH group with their investor networks to take this opportunity. Is this just global? What happens now? The world is being driven by special economic zones, integrated networks of structures. We are not going to be left behind, and we believe that the investments, incentives that Andreas talked about will be found within this network of facilities including labor and environmental aspects. I've mentioned the green energy. Our labor laws are very stringent, and the issues of labor productivity, human rights are incorporated, and we are using these facilities for attracting FDI and also local investment. It is simple as just identifying land, including even the counties that have sufficient land. They do the feasibility studies, master planning is done, because these are the basis for application. Once those three are done, feasibility study, master plan, and environmental impact assessment, the owner of the land can now apply to the Special Economic Zones Authority for gazettement by the Cabinet Secretary for Industrialization, and the developer license is given. The developer can still be the one driving the enterprises, or they can be only leasing by the developer to the enterprises that can go ahead and contract their verticals, or the developer can develop verticals just like the EPZ authority is doing, and then the enterprise rent. So all these platforms are already available, and we are looking into the opportunities for both public and private sector, because there are a lot of private sector zones that have been gazetted. They have done all the platforms, and they are ready to promote investment across the country, in Eldoret, in the coast side. The Kisumu Industrial Special Economic Zones are coming, and many counties are already applying for the gazettement of special economic zones. Yes, so this is the integration that Andreas talked about. The biggest challenge is on fiber, and you can see that compared with Ethiopians, where the majority of the production of fibers is large scale, Kenya is purely small scale, which cannot sustain the kind of production we are talking about. And therefore, the biggest focus now is that stage 4 we talked about. How can we promote large scale industrial production of cotton? And therefore, the government is looking for investments that will invest huge capital into leased public land, which have already been identified in various parts of the country, to do fiber development, especially cotton. And then ginneries as well need to be modernized. There will be investment once the production goes to the higher level. We have 12 textile mills. 3 are integrated, starting from fiber, basically woven, and producing fabrics. And these are the ones, the 2 of which some of the buyers at the EPZs have already visited, to shorten at least the time that Andreas was mentioning at the other time, speed. So they are concerned about speed, and therefore we are looking at opportunity for joint investment and seeing how can also the knitted lines be upscaled so that we have an integration. This 8 can do weaving and at the same time can do knitting, so that there's a diverse production going on for the production for the export market that we are looking at. Therefore, these are opportunities still that more farming, more ginneries, more integrated textile mills, upgrading the existing ones and attracting new ones are opportunities that we have already identified at Ministry of Industrialization. We are working together with the Ministry of Agriculture and all the ministries that are. Yeah, so this is the big animal in the room, the production of cotton. And Kenya now, under the new political dispensation, the roles of counties are very critical, because poor agronomic practices, those 40,000 farmers, if you look at the quantity they are producing, it tells you we are talking about 1 acre which a farmer has. And even out of that 1 acre, their agronomic farm practices, very little chemicals used, we get very, very little out of that. So therefore, the role of counties will be very, very critical in extension services, in motivating farmers to form cooperatives that can bulk land and therefore do huge commercial farming instead of those artisanal small-scale farming that cannot give us yield. So this slide just shows that counties have a role even in the legal framework of licensing, movements, registration, all of those needs to be streamlined, and so that the farmers, together with Agriculture and Food Authority of the national government, to align the functions in cotton development so that the challenges are turned into opportunities, so that we get quality and quantity raw materials that will support the kind of integrated textile mills we are pushing for, both knitting and weaving and woven products. We have already, together with the Council of Governors, mapped the country. Out of the 80%, which is Kenyan total land, 24 counties have huge potential for cotton growing. Therefore, these counties are aware. There are those who are already even motivating farmers by supporting the BT cotton procurement, and farmers are going on with production. We are urging counties to go ahead and help farmers to form strong cooperatives that can own ginaries, because there are also auxiliary enterprises that can come from cotton ginning. So this is how Kenya is sitting now on 24 counties, huge, 80% of Kenya. We can get sufficient cotton to supply, because the 4 textile mills I talked about only get 10% of cotton from Kenya. The 90% is imported from Uganda and Tanzania. So therefore, we are talking about the opportunities which have been identified. The potential is huge. The potential is 420,000 bales. A bale is 280 kilograms. And with BT and with irrigation cotton, this can still be doubled, because this is based on rain-fed agriculture. But if we do commercial farming, we don't have to depend on the rain, and therefore we can get more yield, just like other countries who have commercialized cotton have. So in conclusion, in the next slide, we are in agreement with the USAID TradeHub and the partners that are on this platform that cotton and textile is already a priority in government, right from 2008, when the Vision 2030 was established. The agriculture sector transformation and growth strategy of 2018 has prioritized agriculture, especially crops that supply industry. Therefore, they are called industrial crops. Cotton is one of them, silk and wool in that strategy. And in our Kenya Industrial Transformation Program of 2015, we raised those as problems, and therefore they have been addressed in the agriculture sector transformation and growth strategy. Therefore, we are looking forward to seeing how we integrate agriculture and industry to give us the verticality that we are looking for, that we get from fiber and we end with apparel to shorten the delivery time that Andreas talked about. So this integrated development is what we are looking for, and we have the opportunity to maximize agriculture. The AGOA strategy that we developed in 2018 is looking forward to maximization of the AGOA utilization, because you'll find in my first slide that I did not go through, we have over 2,000 tariff lines. At least there was a mistake talking about 120. It is over 2,000 tariff lines on textile. But if you look at the yield in terms of the export, you will realize that we have not optimized even in those 2,000 tariff lines on textile alone. Therefore, the emphasis now is to bring more investment, integrate the sector, so that we can fully utilize the AGOA opportunity that is there as we wait for the finalization of the Kenya-US FTA that will give us a huge platform again. If AGOA is not renewed, Kenya will be ready playing the leadership role, and the FTA will be the standard that other African countries wishing to come on board will be. And they have talked about investment. We have developed an investment promotion tool. This lady smiling here is a document. It's a snapshot of a document. Therefore, at the Kenya Investment Authority and under the Kenya Investment Policy that was developed in 2018, we are looking forward to the National Investment Council that will drive investments in Kenya going forward. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Okeo, for those remarks and for really shedding light on the work that the Kenyan government is doing to improve the performance of the sector. And you've also highlighted the work that's going on in the various counties, specifically Naivasha and Mombasa, in the development of special economic zones and industrial parks. So thank you so much for that. We'll move into a short question and answer session before we go to the final part of the program. So I'd like to request that should you have a question or comment, you can raise your hand by clicking on the icon. You'll see an icon at the top right with a hand, with a raised hand. And then I will call upon you to ask your question should I see that you have raised your hand. But in the meantime, I'll go through some of the questions that you posted during the pre-registration. I'll start with one from Donald, who works at USAID. And this question is directed to Andres. The question is, for AGOA exports to the US, how can one best identify appropriate US partners, including a distributor, importer, and or a sales representative? Andres?
Thanks for the question. The American Apparel and Footwear Association, which the TradeHub has a special partnership, holds about 1,500 license owners, wholesalers, retailers, which is one of the most important sources of information where the buyers are. Nevertheless, if we analyze the importing structure on the country, on the US, you basically have three major importers. You have the manufacturing licenses, like Mr. Mentioned, PBH being one of them, the largest for sure. But there are others. There are huge ones that at this point they are not fully engaged in East Africa or Kenya, like the G3 Apparel, like the Levi Group, the global brand group, which is part of the Lifeng, which is the major Chinese holding in apparel. So those are the one segment that they do hold license. They are not the owners of the license, but they produce for the licenses like Tommy Hilfiger, Calvin Klein, Guess, and so on and so forth. You have the retailers, which are the direct importers. Okay, they for their stores, being the Gap or Under Armour or Macy's, the ones that do that, including Walmart, for example, that they import their own brands. And finally, and you have the discount, the mass merchandising stores, department stores, which is Marshalls or TJ Maxx or Ross stores that they sell, off season or overrun. Branded, of course, it's a different segmentation. So it's very peculiar, and it's a very vast importing structure to reach the U.S. buyer. I've been dealing with the U.S. market for 28 years, and when I show my last picture, 80 buildings, 40 to 50 floors, and in each floor the buyers are doing that. And when you reach the buyer, each firm has the buyers for children, for knits, for women, woven garments, activewear, thermal wear, casual clothing, accessories, ties. I mean, it's a very wide range on the importing side structure. Is it feasible to get there? Absolutely, absolutely. You gotta go one-on-one. You gotta come with a good perspective and approach, and you have a sales pitch to do to get their attention. Uh, that's basically the how you do it. We've been supporting some firms in that market approach. Some of the factories in Kenya already have long-term relationships, but yet they are always welcoming to receive new buyers into their book of business. One of the things that I wanted to mention also is as part of the value chain proposition, I think the buyers understand that Kenya can develop, already has, like Mr. Has kindly shared with us, and I'm very happy to see it in more detail. Yes, it is important to understand that the country can develop this, huge potential of cotton producers, this large amount of firms, small firms, farmers, uh, but that takes time, okay? And it takes a long-term vision, which I completely agree. And I'm just going to share one thing that the buyers told me, right? Tanzania, who has already a cotton farmer and all the conditions to provide a middle staple cotton, is already recognized bad, right? The largest exporting field from Tanzania, A to Z, an amazing compound on a vertically integrated facility, knitting facility, exporting to the U.S. market, being already the number one, the first textile firm being approved by PBH under certification of U.S. requirements, which are called the American Standard Textiles and Mills, which are all the qualities that need to do in terms of NEPs, shrinkage, color fastness. They are not using Tanzanian cotton. Shock you, right? Why not? And that's the question. Well, of striving an industry also requires certain qualities to produce the kind of fabrics that the U.S. market produces. So Tanzania is using mainly Indian and Egyptian cotton, moving towards incorporating the qualities from Tanzania, but they have developed the textile industry in that sense, and now they are moving towards a backward linkage to use the Tanzanian cotton. That's a shorter term vision. Implement a textile business, even though there's no cotton available, it should be a short-term vision too, because the buyer is saying, okay, I want the fabric. Doesn't matter if it's not a local cotton in the meantime, but it has to be fabric produced in the region. And once again, from the buyer's perspective, this window time, it's very beneficial, but it's very short. The textile should move quicker. Otherwise, other countries in Central America, even East Asia, are moving towards that, and also in the region, like I mentioned, in Tanzania and Ethiopia. Sorry that I bring this also as part of the question, but I think it's related, and as the market is so vast, and that's how the buyers are envisioning the time frame on how to move quicker to the region. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Andres. I don't know, Margaret, would you like to add anything on that in regards to the work that the TradeHub is doing on that?
Thank you so much, Nelly, and thank you, Andres, and thank you also, Donald Kidd, for the question. I think it's really the crux of the discussion today, that it's not very easy to just approach a buyer just like that. There has to be a willing listening ear on the buyer's part, and also a very good pitch and a knowledgeable pitch on the vendor side. So what we've basically been doing with the TradeHub in various sectors, and thank you very much, Andres, for the support you've given us over the past almost 13 months, is really just to provide the opportunity for the companies that we've worked with to be coached by Andres in how basically to approach the US market, understand how to present themselves, understand what to improve in terms of their products and quality, and then finally be exposed to an opportunity. So we've had a couple, two trade show opportunities and a lot of buyer-seller matchmaking opportunities. We've also sent East African enterprises and also East African trade associations, including KM, which represents the apparel manufacturing industry and also the textile industry, incidentally, in Kenya, to meet with American Apparel Footwear Association, and also to meet with individual buyers in different fora. So I think as a result of the work we've done, the firms are well exposed. And I think the next stage is really just doing what Hezekiah, Mr. Okay, has talked about, making sure that Kenya has in place the industries that will support the next level of industrialization, the next stage of development. And I think, obviously, from his presentation and from Andres's perspective, the prospects for actually reaching that level are good. So buyers are there. There's no shortage of buyers. What they need is a good value proposition and demonstrated capacity to deliver on the promise that any of our exporters give. So that is what we've been working with the enterprises to help them to realize that. And after the Q&A session, you hear from a couple of them who've actually been doing those exports and how they've experienced the US buyer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Margaret. So I'll move into the second question. This came from Kithome Mussolini from the Council of Governors. And his question, I'll direct this to Mr. Okeo. What's the government doing to incentivize the counties to enhance the development of the textile and apparel value chain? I know you've covered it a bit, but maybe you could just expound on this a bit.
Counties have a huge role to play. That's the first thing I must agree, because the Kenya Constitution under Article 4, under 4th schedule, sorry, gives the counties a big role. And as we are saying, that role brings industry and agriculture together. So already we have assisted the counties to know the potential. That was the first thing that we worked with Minister of Agriculture, the Agriculture Food Authority, to map the cotton potential in the country. And therefore those 24 counties, the counties have now taken up the role. One, to promote cotton growing as their mandate, because we have now done that. We have shown them the market in the upgraded textile mills. One thing we did was also to address the price of cotton so that it is controlled. Then farmers would be assured of the market. That's the second thing we did. The third thing we supported the counties with is to provide a subsidy for farmers to get the seeds and also to get the chemicals, because even with BT cotton, there's still the aspects of chemicals that are there. The fourth area, we are recommending the counties to identify land not only for agriculture, but land also for industrialization. Once they have been identified, we support them, and we have already supported the county government of Nakuru, the county government of Kisumu, to do feasibility studies through the World Bank. That has made it possible for Kisumu Special Economic Zones to receive the gazettement, and the Egerton University Industrial Park to be prioritized, and Naivasha. So the counties are being worked with through. In the southern part of Kenya, in the coastal area, with the support of Trademark East Africa, we have also worked with the county government, the 6th county government of Jumuiya watu wa Pwani, to earmark areas where industries, particularly for textile, can be. In Mariakani, we are working with the county government of Mombasa to put Mariakani Industrial Park. That feasibility study has been done through Trademark East Africa under the project called Trade and Logistics Hub. Therefore, every time we sit with counties, it is about how can we use the huge potential the counties have to integrate industry and agriculture. And we are working together to identify more opportunities. At the export processing zones, which is also export oriented, counties have been mapped that can do the export promotion investments, and there are counties that have come up and have identified land. The Export Processing Zones Authority, the government of Kwale, the government of Homa Bay, government of county governments, that is, of Kakamega, have already enlisted themselves for gazettement, which is being facilitated by the Export Processing Zones Authority for them now to attract investment in those areas. So we are doing a lot of work together with counties.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Okeo, for that, for sharing about what the government is doing. And I think it's quite impressive to see the work that is going on in the counties in regards to improving the sector. So now we shall move straight into, I see there's no other question on the chat box. So we shall move into the final segment of this webinar. And here we shall hear from the private sector. As Margaret mentioned, we have been supporting the private sector, really coaching them with the help of Andres, but also working with them to access the US market under AGOA. So we shall first hear from Mr. Isaac Maluki. Isaac is the Managing Director of Shona EPZ Limited, which is a textile and apparel company that is based in Athi River. So at Shona, they manufacture knitwear as well as personal protective equipment, PPE, for both the domestic and international market. So welcome, Isaac.
Thank you very much. And it's been really interesting just getting to listen to all of you and to participate in this. So as you've said, my name is Isaac Maluki. I'm the director and founder of Shona EPZ Limited. And we are a factory that has been in operation for at least 3.5 years. And we've really been able to see a lot of growth in our facility. And this growth has mainly been attested to a lot of support that we have received, especially from the USAID team, from Andreas, from Margaret and your team, regarding how we can be able to get access to the international market. So I think for me, what I'm here to talk about really is my experience, our experience since we began operation, and then also just to look at the benefits that we've been getting so far. So I hope I don't get to bore you too much. I think I'll be quick in this. And basically, as Andreas had already mentioned, the factories mainly begin, especially the startup ones, begin with a cut and make process where you simply just get an order where it is only labor that you're taking care of, in terms of earnings. But then in our operations, while we started with the cut and make, we really went through a lot of difficulties. And the difficulties we were experiencing was the fact that we did not have access to the international market. We did not know where to get our raw materials, and not just the raw materials. Vertical integration also includes being able to access anything else that can be used in the garment space towards making sure that you have reduced your lead time. And so we are talking about labels, about polybags, about needles and machine parts. All these things, if we have to import them, then it increases our lead time, and it's things that we have to start thinking of. How can that be made into, how can we encourage other Kenyans, other people to actually invest in even the smaller manufacturing points that can support our business? And so we were obviously limited to the subcontracts, and we also got a lot of expenses that were not mainly meeting our daily needs. And so as directors, obviously, we had to keep going back into our pockets to just maintain the facility. But then we were also unable to really get finance for our long-term orders, because the banking industry in this country, unfortunately, hasn't really packaged something to support the manufacturing space, like if you would compare the Asian region and all. So the unfortunate thing about the banking sector, and I hope some people here in the banking sector who will be listening to this, is that most of our businesses are considered high risk if we do not give them property as collateral for whatever we are borrowing. And if we give them property, then it is automatically just a low risk, and they're willing to lend. What they need to look at is the long-term abilities of the business, so that they can see how they can be able to support them financially. So as a result of not being able to get what we really required, we ended up having to find other sources of getting our financing. And when we don't get the sources from this country, it basically means that the benefits do not lie in this country. So if I'm going to have to go to the US to borrow money to keep my business running, or to get a better deal, then obviously I'll have to have my money sitting out there instead of sitting back here at home. We experienced, obviously our experience has changed, as I was telling you, because of the help that we received, and we started seeing how we can start getting connections with the raw material suppliers. We started being introduced into the international buyers. We have seen, we have been able to obviously access social audit firms who have built credibility to our facility. And we have started seeing international firms, you know, the larger firms coming and showing interest in investing and in supporting our operations at Shona. So some of them have even started giving us programs that we have now, obviously, I just want to let you know that we've now moved from 47 employees when we started to 600 workers. And we've moved now from the cut and make business to the full package, full order business, where now we are expected to increase our workers by another 900 people by December 2021. That is in just a few months' time. And our anticipation with the kind of clients that we have currently engaged, that we are moving with, is that by the end of 2022, we should have doubled what we have by December of 2021. Very, very seamlessly, because we've already started working with them, and we will be able to gradually use whatever we are earning from this business to grow our own facilities without having to think about, depending on financial institutions, really, also to say. So yes, the benefits right now, as I was saying, is that we have now just started engaging huge buyers who have shown us interest, who have supported us, who have walked us through what we need to do to be ready for this market. And we have started working on that. And that has built sustainable growth for the industry, because if we're going to start seeing sustainable growth in our facility, the trickle-down effect will also be sustainable. We're going to have more people that we're going to hire. We're going to encourage other people to set up their businesses and support us. And it's going to kind of be like the way Bangladesh has been operating, with over 200 million, with almost 200 million people in their population. It's estimated that about 50 million are in the garment space, and not all of them are manufacturing. You have the mills, you have the manufacturers, you have all other service providers who are able to make sure that the lead times in when you're placing orders in Bangladesh are, reduced to the minimum, just the way you would place in China. And we're hoping that with the kind of encouragement that we are giving, that we will be encouraging and pushing from Shona, that we will also be able to one day say as a country that we've also reduced the lead times by being able to be vertically integrated. And Andreas, I know you've said about vertical integration over and over again, and it's true. We really cannot underemphasize the need for talking about vertical integration, speed to market, and quality production. So, I think from the kind of experience we've had, it's been a really rough stretch in the last 3 years, but with the vigilance that we've had in what we're doing, and with the focus that we have for the future, we've been able to hold fort. And in the last half year, now to bring us to the 3.5 years of our operations, we've started seeing some really, really good success, really good progress. And we're really excited about the kind of growth rates that we have. And I know we have a few other local manufacturers, manufacturers who are here, like USAID and the like. And just want to tell you, Rudolph, that we really look up to how you've been able to grow your business. And we are hoping that we can be able to surpass what you're doing in a brotherly way. So I think that's about it for us as Shona. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Maluki, for that presentation. And it's quite impressive to see the progress that you have made in the last 3.5 years. Good job on that. So, but also we have heard about the challenges that you have been facing, and I believe the various participants in today's session have taken note of that. But because of time, we'll just move straight into the next speaker. He's also from the private sector, and this is Mr. Rudolph Isinga. Rudolph is the General Manager of New Wide Garments, Kenya EPZ Limited. New Wide is a textile and apparel company that is based in Athi River as well. So over to you, Rudolph. I think in the meantime, as Rudolph sorts out his microphone on his end, maybe I can hand over to Margaret just to give a bit of brief about the work that the Kenya Investment Mechanism is doing in regards to access to finance, which as an issue for entrepreneurs. Margaret?
Thank you, Nelly, for that question. And I think you all noticed from Isaac Maluki's presentation from Shona that he had some branding for Kenya Investment Mechanism. So Kenya Investment Mechanism is a USAID project which has been running to support access of finance and financial services by enterprises, mainly in Kenya, but I understand they're also expanding to the region. And as a USAID project, we've also started working closely with them over the last 8 months or so. And we've been able to collaborate with them in sharing information with the private sector, including people from the apparel sector, on the services they provide. So essentially what they provide is support for reducing, I would say, the hassle for the enterprises to prepare their documentation and find business advisory service providers, and also to locate financial institutions who can actually provide the financing. So what the Kenya Investment Mechanism has been able to do is to provide incentives for the enterprises to work with identified business advisors or service providers, people who are, can do feasibility studies or put the proposals together so that the financial institution can actually look at it. So that's helped tremendously because a lot of the banks cannot look at financing unless the papers are in order and the proper profiling, the books of accounts, and so on have been prepared. In addition, they also have a menu of financial institutions who are willing and ready to look at your projects and see how they can be funded. So for the private sector, this is a very, very attractive scheme. KIM itself does not provide the financing, but it creates a bridge between the financiers, the private enterprises, and also the BASPs, the business advisory service providers. And I'm happy to say we have at least one company which has been assisted to find an investor through the use of this mechanism. So this is another USAID project, and you can get more information on Kenya Investment Mechanism if you write to us, and we can share information on the same. Okay, thank you, Nelly.
All right, thanks, Margaret, for that. I see Rudolph is now on. I'll hand over to you, Rudolph, now.
No, but yeah, the audio is having some problem. Well, I think I'll just go through an introduction. First of all, I would like to thank the presenter, the presentation from Mr. Andres and Mr. Ezekiel, and then from Great Idaka for this Textile Apparel opportunity. Okay, I'll give you a brief of New Wide Garments. The company was incorporated in the year 2009. Actually started operation in 2010. It is a subsidiary of New Wide Group, which is based in Taiwan. There are some other subsidiaries in Cambodia, China, Vietnam, Hong Kong, Ethiopia, and Lesotho. The parent company runs a knit fabric textile mill in China. We have around 10 fabric mills that exports to most of the apparel industry in Africa. So we are running what we call vertically integrated operation, because we source raw material from our parent company, export to Kenya, then we ship to US. We have invested around $4 million in the plants and equipment, and the current employment is around 6,400. We have a multicultural citizen from various countries. We have Kenya, and Sri Lanka and Japanese. And if you look at indirect employment, if you look at maybe 5, which is about 35,000. We have expanded over the years and we have about 5 buildings. Kenya should produce about 1.5 million pieces of apparel per year. Actually, we started with around 400. We started with 400 pieces, and then we grew up to 1.6 million after acquiring some other places in the zone. Our vision actually is we want to produce world-class products for our customers, and we always live on time because we have air shipment. Because air shipments are very expensive comes to production. So if you are producing, you better avoid air shipment as much as possible because you have to dip into your pocket to pay for the air freight. Our mission is to be recognized as one of the most competitive manufacturing industry with a view of transforming the country, the economy of the country through creation of jobs. Our core value, we aspire to introduce a paradigm shift in the way we operate business and deliver products to our corporate customers abroad. We always try to make our customer happy, and that's why we've been able to win more in US. We also have some, we produce neat products for export. We have tops, jackets, shirts, polo shirts, bottoms, slack shorts, tracksuits, sportswear, windsuit, jogging, fleece, including jackets. Our main customers are PVH, whereby you find the brand as ISO Dealer Academy. We do for Walmart and JCPenney. You can say currently our raw material comes from China and Taiwan, and I can see so many countries import from India, but we buy some trade locally in case of short. If you have some short shipment on importation, we normally source from locally. We source all our packaging materials from Kenya, like cartons, labels, and polybags. Actually, our main suppliers are like All Pack Industries, Prime Cartons, so are the ones who are feeding us with the roll just as a backup. We are trying because the challenge of when we talk about the expiry of GOA in 2025, we don't know what we'll do, but we can say that we need also to diversify and see whether some of these products can be produced in Kenya. That will cut down the cost of freight charges and also will make us be eligible to US with any restriction. This industry has really supported the common the common wananchi, say the community surrounding. Like we talk about Kajiado and Kajiado and Machakos, they have really benefited from the facility because if you talk about 76,400 employees, you need to have more than 1,000 houses. That's the real estate. And have the industry that banking industry, which is also depending on this facility. We have shipping, we have transport, so many. It's a lot. So it has really turned the economic activities in these two counties. Of course, we are requesting, actually, our main aim is to make sure that the manufacturing sector is evolved to the county. I'm very happy that the chair is sharing our ideas that this manufacturing should be involved. We have access to the road. SGR is also passed through Naivasha. We can utilize this infrastructure to expand, to involve the manufacturing to the county level. And you see, I have to give out the reasons why the growth is very slow, because when the investor comes to the country, some of them, they would like to set up a factory. Some of them, they would like to find a ready go down to the unit so that they start their business as soon as possible. So it's advisable that we need to set up ready buildings for apparel producers, and we improve what we call the one-stop shop. Let the government partner with the private sector so that we have can facilitate trade as soon as possible, so that the buyers should not be going to Nairobi, or when they are in Kisumu, they start thinking of Nairobi. they should just confine to be Kisumu and run their business there. We should also ensure that the industrial park has adequate water, because that has been a major problem. In fact, in PZ, you find the water is very expensive, but if, like Lesotho, they provide water for free. And I think the Kenya government should also look at that, try to make sure that we provide water for free. I don't know whether it will be possible, but if we do it, it will be a win-win. And we look at affordable electricity, because we've been having disruption of electricity. And if we can have affordable electricity, the investors will come. We also have, must put up the resources so that we have the effluent treatment facility for textile mills, because textile mills, when it comes to issues about effluent, is very important, because they look at that aspect before they set up the mills. We need also to set up a place of excellence, because this apparel industry is labor intensive, and find that the country keeps on offloading graduates to the market. If you have a place of excellence, we can have a training within the area, whereby we train people and they join the income factory. That will also be a win-win for the economy of the country. For us to attract the investment, we must have amenities, housing, clinics, schools, so that the workers can also take their kids to the nearest school. And what I can say that it's better we start thinking of unlocking this opportunity, so that we can turn this country into an industrial hub. The market in America is so big. You can see we started with 400 people, and now we are 6,400. If we have like 3,000 or 4,000 people in every county, these stories of people talking about lack of employment, or rather having people on the street walking around, you have a mammoth crowd when the politician passes around, it will be no more. People will be free on Saturday and Sunday. And if they want to meet their politician, let them meet them on Saturday and Sunday, because they will be busy during working days. So that is, thank you so much, and have a good day.
Thank you, Rudolph, for that presentation and just shedding light on the work that you have been doing at New White Garments, and also sharing the opportunities that exist for the counties, to develop an export-oriented textile and apparel sector. I see Mr. Wambua had his hand up. I will just unmute him.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Mwema Wambua. I'm a director in the Department of Trade, Industrialization and Innovation here in Machakos County. My question is a general one in relation to how the USAID, as well as other agencies that are involved in the deliberations around AGOA, and in addition to the Department of the Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development in the national government, how are they engaging county governments, specifically departments that are involved in issues on trade and industry, in the capacity building towards the negotiations, whether bilateral or multilateral? In this particular case, the now ongoing negotiations between Kenya and the US on the upcoming trade agreement. Thank you.
Okay, all right. I think that question, I'll just direct it to Margaret as well, on how USAID is engaging the counties towards the bilateral discussions in regards to the.
Thank you, Nelly. I think the appropriate person would be somebody from USAID, plus the Industrialization Secretary, Hezekiah Okeo. So maybe we can have Hezekiah first, Hezekiah talk first, and then after that, if there's somebody still from USAID, the USAID mission, they can respond to that. So maybe just what I can say is for us as the TradeHub project, because we're not actually USAID proper, we are part of a project. We implement the existing arrangement, which is the AGOA arrangement. And that is an existing trade preference program, which has been in place, which you already heard about. So our role really is to create awareness amongst the enterprises and also create awareness through this activity we are doing jointly through the USAID collaboration with the Kenya Council of Governors. We've been able now to reach out to the county officers directly, the CCMs, plus the chief officers and the various trade directors and investment directors. So really, to the extent that we have this activity and we have other things that we've done at enterprise level, we've been engaging with the counties. With respect to the specific issue of the FTA, I don't think I have that information to be able to share with you, but we'd encourage you to engage with either the national government through Mr. Hezekiah, and you heard he's the one who is in charge of that particular docket under the FTA team, or even go directly to USAID proper. So I think, Mr. Mwema, I'll leave it at that, and the other two people who can respond, we'll see how we can get a response to you. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. The reason why I raised this question is, if you may allow me to comment.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
The reason I raised the question is because oftentimes international trade is defined as a function of the national government. And when you read Schedule 4 of the Constitution, it defines issues on international trade to be functions of the national government. However, as our experiences here in the county, specifically in the department handling issues on trade and industrialization, we've made this observation that we are in constant interaction with investors. We are in constant interaction with exporters, even in the case of farmers. And so oftentimes you find that when these negotiations are happening at the national government level, oftentimes do we have technical officers from the counties involved in perhaps understanding the essence of the structures or the substantive arguments in the negotiations, to the extent therefore that once they are engaged in the negotiations or in understanding the documents under discussion, that they would be in a good point of information to advise the investors or the exporters or the traders. So I was asking this question with the thinking that it is of essence that such discussions or negotiations about establishing new trade agreements, that it would be of import that counties, especially departments involved in trade, are engaged perhaps in structured training programs to ensure that the counties, technical officers have inbuilt understanding or technical expertise on the substance of these trade negotiations or the ratified documents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mwema. If I may respond in kind, if you read the Constitution, specifically the 4th schedule, article number 32, on the roles of national government, it reads, the distribution of functions between the national government and county governments, and it specifies that one of the roles of the national government is capacity building and technical assistance to the counties. So this is an area I think you need, as I said, to take up with the national government to see how your capacity can be built with respect to issues of trade negotiation and discussion. Because as it says in the same Constitution, one of the primary roles of national government is foreign affairs, foreign policy, and international trade, and negotiation of the same. So I think it's very important that you start engaging horizontally with the national government so that you can have that input at an early stage. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and to add on to what Margaret has said, I think in regards to your question also, Wambua, you can direct any further questions on that to the emails that were shared on the invitation. That's with the USAID mission here, but also, as Margaret has said, with the the national government, Mr. Hezekiah will be a good resource. So those contacts are on the invitation email and you shall see them there. So please feel free to direct these there. So I think time is far gone. We're already 12 minutes past time. And since I see there is no other question, I think we'll come to a close of our webinar today. I think from the discussions, it's clear there is a lot of opportunities in the textile and apparel sector. And there's a lot of work that needs to go into this. The market is there, it's huge. We've had, it stands at a whopping $80 billion. That's for the US market alone. So we need to all play our role. That is the national government, the county governments, to really support the private sector to take advantage of these opportunities that exist. So I think if there's no one else who would like to make a comment, we'll just come to a close. But today's presentations shall be shared with all participants. So we have your emails and we shall email these presentations to you. So look out for that. But I'd like to really thank you so much for participating in this webinar. And first and foremost, I'd like to thank our speakers for taking the time to prepare your presentations and just share the information and knowledge that you have shared with us. And also for the participants for taking time to participate in this session. As I've mentioned, should you have any questions on matters relating to AGOA for the textile and apparel sector and also other sectors, please feel free to direct these to the emails shared. These emails belong to Sarah Lamb and Richard Mugo, who both work at USAID. So I think I don't have anything else to add. I'd like to thank you so much, and I wish you all a great evening. Goodbye.